fact you believe the vaccine is safe and effective. I'm not sure I understand it. Anyway, let's talk to Dr. Hilary about it, because Dr. James says he doesn't want to be a poster boy for the anti-vax movement. I can't see how he avoids that, frankly.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to get anything like equal time to refute what Stephen James has said. The basic point that I'd like to make is the vast majority of doctors and scientists think the science is plenty strong enough to support vaccination and mandatory vaccination for NHS staff in contact with patients.
Hey guys, well, in case you haven't heard, Dr. Hilary Jones, the TV doctor who always appears on Good Morning Britain and Lorraine and programmes like that, telling people about COVID and all that other kind of stuff and what they should do to stop themselves from dropping dead, has been on GMB this morning, and he's blasted Dr. Steve James, the NHS doctor who confronted Health Secretary Sanjay Javid the other day at that hospital and said he didn't agree with mandatory vaccinations for members of the NHS. Now, I didn't know this until I watched the clip, but GMB were actually interviewing Dr. Steve when Dr. Hilary kind of told him off. So let's have a look at this clip. Sorry about the quality, it's not the best. See what you make of this.
If King's is going to lose 1,400 members of staff, then how's the NHS going to survive? And you've got to look at the practicality.
Dr. James, what I don't understand is you're prepared to lose your job and put your department under pressure as a result of you losing your job, because I don't know, how easy it can be to get an anaesthetist with your sort of training and qualifications in there, despite the fact you believe the vaccine is safe and effective. I'm not sure I understand it. Anyway, let's talk to Dr. Hilary about it, because Dr. James says he doesn't want to be a poster boy for the anti-vax movement. I can't see how he avoids that, frankly.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to get anything like equal time to refute what Stephen James has said. The basic point that I'd like to make is the vast majority of doctors and scientists think the science is plenty strong enough to support vaccination and mandatory vaccination for NHS staff in contact with patients. By his own admission, he's got antibodies, so at some point he's been in contact with coronavirus and has been capable of transmitting coronavirus to the sickest patients in society in intensive and critical care. That's the first point. Having not been vaccinated, he is likely to have a higher viral load when he's been infectious and to carry that virus for longer. And all the science shows that transmission in an unvaccinated person is likely to carry on for longer than it would in a vaccinated person. So he talks about the risk to himself. There is an ethical duty for doctors under the GMC regulations in communicable diseases to immunise yourself to protect the risk to your patients. And clearly that isn't happening here.
And you have the extra consequence that because of his refusal, and we understand, I think 1 in 10 NHS staff currently not vaccinated.
Yeah.
Losing that number of staff
and some of them
massive.
Absolutely.
At a time of huge pressure on the NHS.
I understand that, and a lot of doctors and scientists are infuriated that because a lot of them were hesitant facing this deadline that's fast approaching, that this will have done a lot of damage, that this will have dissuaded them from actually overcoming that hesitancy and coming forward and being vaccinated.
Well, we have to go back then for the right of reply to that telling off to Dr. James. That was an effective telling off from one of your fellow professional doctors. He says that your behaviour is, if you like, selfish. What you're doing is for your own interests and good and to support your political views in terms of human rights and civil rights, but you're putting patients at risk. You've actually put patients at risk.
10% of the NHS staff are essentially in the same position as me. I'm not a fringe person. I'm having an expression of my voice, a voice which hasn't been heard. I've got thousands and thousands of positive comments from people. Hundreds of doctors and nurses have contacted me saying, thank you, let's open this debate up. The debate has not been held. Many groups of doctors, of other politicians have said the science isn't strong enough. And, if we don't have a debate, it's a single story, a single narrative, that's not science. Science is questioning it.
Absolutely, and your voice has been heard. It's been heard here, and that's our job. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming on. Thank you, Hilary, for putting the other point of view.
Now, I can see the argument from both sides of the fence here. I think to make something mandatory in a workplace is always dangerous. To say to people, look, if you want to work here, you have to have this injection. You don't have it, you're out. I think that's a very dangerous game to play, especially within something like the NHS. Because if a lot of people disagree with you, a lot of people walk, and you've got a major staff shortage in areas where you desperately need staff. So that's not a good thing. And I think sometimes if you make something mandatory, some people are less likely to do it. Sometimes if you force someone to do something, they'll say, no, I'm not going to do it now. Whereas if you leave them to make their own mind up, they might come around. But forcing them just makes it worse. So I can understand why people wouldn't want that. But I also get Dr. Hilary's point. You know, it's a good point, let's be honest. Look, if you work in the medical area and you are working with critical patients and you are carrying a germ and they catch it, it could make them even more critically ill. And I completely understand that. And you should do all you can do to stop that happening. As I'm sure you're aware, doctors have, the Hep B vaccine. They all have to have that because, they could pass it on through blood infections, etc. And as far as I know, they haven't walked out over that. But they are threatening to over this. So it's a really kind of weird, interesting dilemma, and I don't know what they're going to do. Because as they said there, if you lose thousands of staff in a hospital, what's going to happen? They're not going to be able to do their job. People will show up to be treated, and there'll be no one to treat them. That could lead to a huge, huge problem. Because what happens then? They send people home and say, I don't know, put a plaster on it, drink some TCP, have an aspirin. But obviously, most people go to hospital for far more serious ailments that require far more serious medicine and treatment. So there you go. Anyway, thanks for watching. Have a nice day, and goodbye.